Good morning. Now, we have lots of people here today, and we're going to do something that I forgot to do last week. Find someone that you didn't drive here with today, and I want you to tell each other that you're happy the other person's here, and I want you to tell each other why you're happy they're here. And we're going to do that for about a minute, and then I'm going to call you back, or I mean,
a minute.
Roughly a minute, a preacher's minute. All right, go. All right. I've said this before, but I like when we do that because I want us to remember we are a people who are happy to be together. We're happy to be part of the family of God.
Amen.
I don't know that many of you will have heard of them, but has anyone here ever heard of Holy Post Media? Yeah, I didn't think so. It started as something called a podcast called the Holy Post Podcast. It was launched in 2012 by a man who you will probably know. His name was Phil Vischer, and he was the creator of VeggieTales. And his friend, a former editor of Christianity Today. They aimed to have a Christian perspective on, politics and social issues and culture and all sorts of things. And anyway, it became very popular. And so then it went from just being one podcast to a group of podcasts. They host a bunch of big name theologians and scholars and stuff, and they talk about issues in the world. As a side note, they have a very good video on YouTube called The Rapture is Not in the Bible, and I highly recommend it. Now, for those who don't know, a podcast, what a podcast is, think radio on the internet. Really. It's just an audio or even video series that you can watch on your phone, on an app, or on a website. They're on YouTube too. It's just a video or internet version of a radio show, really. There was a podcast on this group called Curiously Caitlin, and she's a PhD student. Anyway, I was listening to an episode of that, and so it's co-hosted by this woman, Caitlin, who wrote The Ballot and the Bible: How Scripture Has Been Used and Abused in American Politics and Where to Go From Here. And co-host Mike Strallo from Jill's House. If you've never heard of Jill's House, they're a Christian nonprofit that offers overnight respite for people with raising kids with mental illness. Anyway, it was quite a good show. They do this sort of back and forth discussion. It was enjoyable. And I bring this up because in this episode, the co-host Mike tells a story about his family and Christmas time. His family they were looking for it for a while, and they purchased this beautiful, beautiful nativity scene. Apparently it was just gorgeous. And part of this scene was that you could take baby Jesus out of the manger, you could pick him up, look at him, move him around, put him back. He actually sort of he sat right on the manger, right in the middle. Can you guess what happened? After a couple of years, they lost baby Jesus. The most important part, really. And so then they had this almost humorous discussion of, well, can we still put it out? Can we still put the nativity scene out without Jesus? I mean, it's still really pretty, and like 95% of it's still there. Can we still set this out? And they ended up realizing that a nativity scene without Jesus is just a beautiful barnyard scene, right? It's just a barnyard display. And I say this because for many who celebrate Christmas, tragically within the church too, I think we just go through the motions. You know, from the outside looking in, it looks like how a Christian Christmas celebration should. But if you take a closer look, you realize Jesus is actually missing. It's not really a celebration of Christ. It's become a celebration of consumerism and capitalism, maybe even family, which is good. Family is good, but it's still not the reason for celebrating Christmas. And for a lot of churches, the way we celebrate Christmas tragically just looks the way everybody else does. It really focuses on presents, and it really focuses on family even. And, you know, that makes sense if you're from a non-Christian family. You know, if you don't believe the story of Jesus' birth and of the Gospels, but you still want to celebrate this holiday that has saturated our culture, and you're trying to find some deeper meaning for it, you'll say it's all about family and giving each other presents. Well, in response to that, there's a quote that I would like to share that I thought captured it really well. And it says, "The Christian story is not about your nuclear family giving gifts to each other and traveling across the country to be together. It is fundamentally about the family of God, people who are not satisfied with what's happening now, but are desiring what's promised in the future. Focusing on Christ's coming before we get to Christmas not only distinguishes us from the people who celebrate Christmas as non-believers, but also helps us celebrate it better. It helps us ask, what are we actually waiting for? What are we celebrating?" Which brings me to the point. The true focus of Christmas is supposed to be Jesus. It's supposed to revolve around Jesus. And it breaks my heart that so much of it doesn't. Sometimes I think we forget. We get caught up with the culture and with the flow around us and get dragged into the hurry and the gifts and all of that. And so I think a reminder every now and then is a good thing. And that's why I think it's worth spending a few weeks leading up to Christmas, and not just Christmas Day, focusing on different biblical themes surrounding the birth of Christ. You know, it helps us remember what this celebration is supposed to be about. Jesus, his first coming, and also his second coming that we're looking forward to. You know, last week we talked about the hope surrounding Jesus' birth. You know, Jesus' birth marked the arrival of the long-hoped-for Messiah and deliverer. Something that the Old Testament is building up to the whole time. You see it all throughout. And that hope of that coming Messiah carried the people through a lot of hardship. It carried them through exile, 400 years of silence, through the Roman occupation. And we determined that as the Israelites waited expectantly for the Messiah to be born, at this time of year, we relate to them as we celebrate his birth and also hope and wait expectantly for the unknown time of his future return, where he will fulfill the rest of God's promises. And this is what I want to talk about this week is the peace associated with Christ's coming, with his birth. And Isaiah is going to be, Isaiah 9, 6-7 is really our key passage today. Because when it comes to peace, Isaiah knocks it out of the park. In every other passage, every other writing, every other book in the Old Testament, Isaiah's use of peace is off the charts in comparison. And so he promises in chapter 9, verses 6-7, this messianic ruler who he calls, among other things, the Prince of Peace. And he says this prince his reign will establish endless peace, marked by wisdom, justice, righteousness, provision, and God's presence. And so we're going to look right now at Isaiah 9, 6-7. And it reads, "For a child will be born for us, a son will be given to us, and the government will be on his shoulders. He will be named Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Eternal Father, Prince of Peace. The dominion will be vast, and its prosperity will never end. He will reign on the throne of David and over his kingdom to establish and sustain it with justice and righteousness from now on and forever. The zeal of the Lord of armies will accomplish this." And so, in case someone here doesn't know, although I think we all do, Jesus is this Prince of Peace, or the Prince of Shalom, as it's written. And so, even if you don't know any Hebrew, I'm going to go out on a limb and say most of us here, if not all, probably know the word shalom, right? It's very often translated peace, and today it's used as a contemporary Hebrew greeting among Israelites. But its background is quite rich and meaningful, and so I want to look at that a little bit. The word shalom is a noun, and it is most commonly translated peace. Its root word is a verb, shalem, which is action-oriented. It is the being at peace, or the state of being shalom, the state of being in peace. So I want to look at some examples in Scripture of shalem, or the state of being shalom, the state of being in peace. We're going to look at Deuteronomy 27, 4-6 for a minute, and it says, "When you have crossed the Jordan, you are to set up these stones on Mount Ebal, as I am commanding you today, and you are to cover them with plaster. Build an altar of stones there to the Lord your God. Do not use any iron tool on them. Use uncut stones to build the altar of the Lord your God, and offer burnt offerings on it to the Lord your God." Moses here is talking to Joshua and the Israelites. They're on the east side of the Jordan River, and Moses knows he's going to die. But the people are going to cross over into the land. So Moses says, make this altar. Don't carve the stones. Don't get fancy. Don't make them into nice blocks. And this is important because the background they're coming from here is both an Egyptian and a Canaanite altar style. The Egyptians in particular, but they would make these huge 10-foot by 15-foot platforms, and they used these big carved rectangular stones. They found one in northern Israel, and they've recreated it. And each slab was about 4 feet by 2 feet. And then they would carve these so that they would fit nicely together into that big platform. And they've left Egypt, and Moses says, when you make this altar, don't do that. Verse 6, he says, use uncut stones. What it actually says is, use shalem stones to build the altar of Yahweh your God. Undisturbed, whole, uncut. So there's something to this word about fullness or completeness or being unaltered. And there are other examples of this word shalem, to be at peace, to be shalom. Moses talks about giving a full and honest weight in Deuteronomy 25:13-15. The word is have a shalom, an honest weight. So instead of trying to con each other, instead of having a weight bag with a bunch of different little stones in it labeled 5 grams that actually weighs, 6 grams or 4 grams or 3 or whatever, something dishonest, instead of having that, have one full, unaltered weighing stone that actually weighs 5 grams. Have this shalem stone, one unaltered, uncut piece, so you don't scam each other. Hezekiah in 2 Kings 21-3 uses this word in a more metaphorical sense. He says he gets really sick, this King Hezekiah of Judah. And Isaiah comes to him and says, you're gonna die. You're not gonna get better. And so Hezekiah weeps and he says, Yahweh, remember how I have walked faithfully and wholeheartedly before you. Literally, with a shalem heart. Heart means, in this case, inner being. Your whole inner being. Who you are. And so with his shalem being, with his whole being, with a completeness of heart, he has walked faithfully before God. He says, please remember this, Lord. And so, shalem really means this whole and unaltered, and there's this integrity to it. And so showing shalom means wholeness and integrity in daily life, worship, and inner devotion to God. The words shalom and shalem are also connected to Solomon completing the temple, to God fulfilling his word that he delivers through his prophets, and to neighbors repaying what's lost. When one neighbor, it's in Exodus, when one neighbor accidentally burns another neighbor's field, he goes and he makes recompense. And the wording is, he will make shalom. He will make it whole, he will make peace. And so that brings us to the idea of not shalem, but shalom, peace, or well-being. As I mentioned, shalom is how you say hello in modern Hebrew these days. I go up to Don on the street and I say, shalom. And he says, shalom. But it's more than just an acknowledgement of someone's existence like a simple hello can be. It's really saying, I wish wholeness and completeness upon you. What do you exist for? I wish that you are fulfilling that. That's what it means these days to greet someone saying shalom. And it seems to come from Hebrew turns of phrases in the Old Testament. One of the biggest ones we'll look at is Genesis 37, 12-14. After the business with the fancy coat blows over, Joseph's father sends him to check on the well-being of his brothers and of the flock of sheep. So verse 14, however it's translated, reads, go and see about the shalom of your brothers and about the shalom of the flock. In other words, are they safe? It comes up in Exodus 18, 6-7 as well. Moses and the people have arrived at Mount Sinai. Jethro sends word to Moses that he is bringing his wife and sons. And so Moses meets Jethro, and then it says they ask each other about their shalom. How are you doing? Are you fulfilling your life's purpose? Are you flourishing? Shalom in biblical thought isn't just the absence, this peace isn't just the absence of negative things. These days we think of peace as, an absence of conflict. But it was much more focused on the positive presence of certain good things, of the fulfilling of your purpose in life, of your relationships are whole, nothing is broken, there are no unresolved tensions, of well-being and flourishing and a life lived in harmony with God's purposes. That was biblical peace. So the focus really is not, are the frustrating things out of the way? It's, what is the purpose? What is the meaning of this, and are we fulfilling it? Are we whole? So ultimately, biblical peace, this shalom, is a state of wholeness and completeness. It is harmony with God, with self, others, and even with creation. And so this brings us back to Isaiah 9, the Prince of Shalom. I'm going to read that again because I think it's such a great passage. For a child will be born for us, a son will be given to us, and the government will be on his shoulders. He will be named Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Eternal Father, Prince of Peace. The dominion will be vast, and its prosperity will never end. He will reign on the throne of David and over his kingdom, to establish and sustain it with justice and righteousness from now on and forever. I missed a verse. The zeal of the Lord's armies will accomplish this. There's going to be a new king from the line of David. Government is going to be on his shoulders. He is going to rule. And then we are given this list of symbolic names which actually seem to reflect this practice of Egyptian enthronement texts, where they would give all these honorary titles. And it's this enthronement text here. That's what he's modeling. He is saying the titles of this king. Counselor of Wonders, Mighty God, really mighty warrior God, Eternal Father, and Prince of Peace, Prince of Shalom. It actually says Sar Shalom, which is literally ruler of Shalom. And it seems to be almost deliberately vague. So it could mean his personal qualities. He has Shalom. But it could also mean he rules with Shalom. He brings Shalom. And the idea is that it's really all of the above. This ruler, this Prince of Peace, exists in a state of Shalom, completeness, wholeness, harmony. But as a ruler, he also brings it and shares it with his people. And verse 7 says, the dominion, will be vast, and its prosperity will never end. The word dominion here is the same as the word government farther up. And what's translated prosperity here in the CSB is the word shalom. His government, his rule, his dominion will be vast, and its shalom, its peace, its wholeness, its completeness will never end. The rule will have completeness that never ends. The shalom won't stop. He, Jesus, is shalom. He is completeness and wholeness and harmony, and he brings that for his followers, and it never ends. Paul says Jesus himself is our peace. He reconciles divided peoples into one new humanity through his death and resurrection. He talks about this in Ephesians 2:14-16. He talks about how the Israelites and the non-Israelites have been brought together in equal standing in the family of God. And even though these two groups have historically been at odds and kind of hated each other at times, the Messiah, or Prince of Peace, has brought them together. Verse 14 says, He himself is our peace. And he says, through his body, in verse 16, he put hostility to death. This can mean he put the hostility between these peoples to death, and he put the hostility between people and God to death. He brings shalom, completeness, wholeness, peace. He makes us right with God. He unites us as one family, taking away the conflict, bringing harmony. He makes us whole again, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, sometimes if we're really, really blessed, even physically. He changes us into what he intended for humans to be from the beginning, before the fall. And we get a taste of this now, after Jesus' death and resurrection, when we choose to follow him. And we will experience it in full at his second coming. So through our relationship with Jesus, we keep growing more into this fullness and completeness, more and more as we walk with him and submit to him as our ruler. And when he returns, it will be complete. We will be whole and complete, and there will be harmony. This is what Jesus' birth means. He brings peace. Now, peace between us and God, and in the future, peace in every sense. So we celebrate the peace that he brought at his first coming, and we look forward to the complete peace that he will be bringing on his return. And so with all of that said, I have a question for you. How's your shalom? What's your purpose in life? Do you know it? What is the thing that God made you to do? Are you fulfilling it? Are you whole? Are you fulfilling your purpose? If you don't know your purpose, take some time and pray and think about it. What has God called me to do? And if you do know your purpose, work towards fulfilling it to the glory of God. And are you flourishing as a human being and living in harmony with God's purposes, with his word? Remember, shalom, or this biblical peace, is a state of wholeness and completeness. It is harmony with God, with ourselves, with others, and with creation. So as you walk with Jesus, this ruler of peace, do you feel more complete, more whole? Are you less broken than a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago? Is he making you more whole? Are you submitting to his rule? Are you becoming more complete? Or another way, are you becoming more like Jesus? How are your relationships with people? With God, is there harmony? Are you obeying his will and aligning yourself with him? Or are you resisting him in some area? How are your relationships with other people? How do you interact with your family and friends? Is there harmony, or is there conflict and arguments? How do you interact with your co-workers, strangers, government? Is there harmony? Are you a peacemaker in all of these relationships, or is there conflict that you are contributing to instead of bringing peace to? How is your relationship with yourself? Which might be a funny thing to say, but what I mean is, how do you think about yourself and feel about yourself? Are you really hard on yourself? I am the worst. I am a sinner. I'm worthless. I'm this. I mess up at this all the time. I suck at this. Or are you aware of your value in God's eyes? Are you aware of and have you accepted that you are a child of God and He loves you and He values you? Do you have harmony with God, self, others, and creation? As we submit to Jesus as our ruler of peace, this is the peace that we grow in and experience and will experience in even more of in the future. This is what Jesus' birth means. Peace. And so this is what we celebrate this time of year at His birth. The peace He brought and the peace that He's bringing. And so to close, I want to do something for you that I try to do for my kids every night. Something that God, through Moses, commanded the Israelites to do. To pronounce this blessing found in Numbers 6, 24 to 26, over each other. And so, may the Lord bless you and protect you. May the Lord make His face shine on you and be gracious to you. May the Lord look with favor on each and every one of you and give you peace. Shalom.